Now it's going live. Cool, cool. So look, I want, hi everyone. We're just going to start. There's no introduction. We're just going to have a chat about all sorts of things. Just welcome Simon. So, while I was, for the last God knows how long, couple of hours, been working out the thread of what we might talk about today, I always listen to music coming from my Apple TV over there. And something occurred to me. I don't know, I just want to know what you think. Why is it? Because I was listening to Snow Patrol, one of my favorite groups, and I just need. Okay, so yeah, we're back. I have no idea what happened there. My internet's really cool, but everything went. Simon's gone. He'll come back, I'm sure. So anyway, so I'll just speak to my friends watching. So the thing that occurred to me is why, when I think of my favorite groups, why are my favorite albums from nearly all the groups that I like the most? Why? Hold on. Should we really be doing this when we're going live? I suppose we should, because we don't really have a choice. He's here saying, let me in, let me in. I'm not letting you in. So this is great. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll be back in. Oh, he's here. And here you are. Let me in, let me in, let me in. I'm not letting you in, dude. You are the one that left. Or something happened. No. Anyway, something happened. Definitely. So look, anyway, look, why is it that band Snow Patrol, why is it that my emotional connection to that band is always based on the very first album and the very first song? Do you know what I mean? And it's like there was somebody who spoke to me today and was talking about, I don't know, there's something on social media, and somebody had just said something. What was the band that you was into when you were 15? You know what I mean?
David Bowie.
Oh, for me it was Queen. And that made me a Queen fan forever. But my favorite, my default go-to is the first. So Final Straw from Snow Patrol, the very first record on their very first album. And what it just makes me think that if you're an artist and you're releasing your first album, the amount of effort and energy you put into your first of anything, you know what I mean? Your very first, you put everything into that. Coldplay's first album, the only album in that style they ever made, and then they massively evolved and changed. And I still listen to the odd bit, but I can't listen to a Coldplay album anymore. But that very first album, I can listen to every single tune, never skipping any. It's amazing. The first of most groups is usually the one, and they've released like God knows how many albums, but I default to the first two every time. I have no idea why. Anyway,
I find it's a relationship to music, Guy. Remember when I was at school and got that cassette, Sony printed on the front in a little plastic box that you opened up, and there were 6 cassettes, and your favorite music was in there, and then it was listening to those albums under the sheets. And then when I left, college became more active. I suppose discotheques started happening, And then for a period of time, music was when I was working as an assistant and carting 53 cases around for someone, of which 3 were just her music. And now my relationship is Radio Monte Carlo, because it's just easy. And unfortunately, they've had to succumb to advertising. But before, I drive at night to avoid all the traffic. And it used to be, Radio Monte Carlo blues through the night without anyone giving it the large. And now, unfortunately, it's sort of being diluted. But yeah, relationships with music.
Do you ever remember that ship that used to be the illegal ship that used to transmit? I can't remember what it's.
Radio Luxembourg.
Radio Luxembourg. I remember having this tiny little transistor radio. It was about this big. And I had no headphones. So at night I used to listen to it. I used to put it under my pillow and I'd lay my head on the pillow. I'd have it as low as I can get it. And then my dad would still, from the other fucking room, come in, turn that bloody music off. And it's like, how can you hear it, for Christ's sake? Seriously, it's under a pillow, and it's only this far from my ear, and you're telling me it's too loud. It's just amazing. But yeah, I mean, and now, because of everything we're probably going to talk about today, everything evolves. So many musicians don't make albums now, they just make songs because of streaming. Why make an album? Why tell a story? And it is such a shame. And the problem is, poor little Anna, she's only 12. She's not going to be into albums. She's into songs.
No. Because the song now is tell the story quick.
Yeah, well, it's well, that's a perspective, and it's true. But the other perspective, what we're going to talk about today, is how do you make the most amount of money with the least amount of effort? You just make really cool songs. You don't make albums. They take too long. It's way too much work, and out of an album, you're only going to make your real money out of 3 songs?
And then
the ones with the big songs. Yeah.
Every spin-off you can grab.
So, today the subject is Adobe, and obviously, just so that people will know our perspectives, I don't think you could get a bigger space between 2 people than me and you in this, okay? Because you are, from Adobe's perspective, you're a customer, you're a punter, okay? And you're a photographer, so you are in the epicenter of this shitstorm that's going on right now. And then you couldn't get further away from my experience with working with them and using the product forever and using their products, not in the world of digital photography, but way before. So I have a very different perspective. So a couple of people brought the Adobe scandal to my attention. I'm not even tuned anymore to anything. It's quite weird. After like 10 years, pretty much 90%, 80% of my working days in the year for 10 years as a consultant, I was representing them on stage. And it's very hard now because my radar doesn't even have them in the metadata for things I'm looking for. I don't respond. I don't care what they do. I literally don't care what they do at all. So I never sit there and get deep into any subject that comes up when I see somebody on YouTube or somebody online is really angry about Adobe. But a couple of people sent me text messages, and I just thought, well, if it's put a bee in their bonnet, I should probably have a little look. And so I'm going to let you now start with entering into this Adobe situation from your perspective.
I think it's very simple for me. As you know, I had 30 years in the darkroom, so moving over to digital wasn't such a problem, because in the old days, after you had kindly oiled and scanned very well the transparency, we could get a repeatable copy from that, but from black and white we couldn't. So digital opened up that repeatable copy. And the reason that was important was because certainly trying to get work by taking your portfolios around the advertising agencies. Art director, copywriter might just mention that they had a favorite picture and you try and make a copy of that. It was very difficult, certainly if you've been toning or so on and so forth. So when we moved over to Adobe, I think all those years ago, the price was prohibitive, but I think you bit the bullet and you got what you paid for. Argument, is it industry standard? I think it is. Argument, is it a monopoly that since it went to subscription has, or was the beginning of ruffling many feathers? But I think at the beginning what they did is they tried to balance it, that certainly when a new Photoshop came out, if you were buying the old program, there was always an outlay. And their balance on the subscription at the time seemed to be compatible. And it's only just recently that they've tried to do ridiculous things at the corporate view, where profits come over human touches or humanity. So it becomes a bore. Is it an ethical issue? I mean, as I said to you before, my point of view is I use it. It's an industry standard. Do I really want to learn something else? And do I use artificial intelligence? No. So can I keep myself clean from them? Yes. So maybe if I just had ignored it and carried on, it wouldn't have made any difference. But, you know, I think we're both responsible for little ones and a future, and you try and do what you can to try and maintain whatever sensibilities there are in the market where a client feels he's getting good service and not just bulldozed. So that's where I'm at. At the end of the day, would I change? No, for the reasons that I've said. I only pay €12 a month. I don't have the full package, and I'm very happy with Bridge, Camera Raw, Photoshop. I use their beta, which maybe I shouldn't, because in some of the videos that we've looked at, I think there's an inference that if you use a beta, you're already dug into their T's and C's. There's no flexibility there. And also having an account on IM and Behance was the beginning of the rot, because they created a foundation then saying, oh, look, people have voluntarily signed up for these things, knowing that there's a positive in terms of marketing and coverage, using platforms efficiently. But isn't it just that? It's always taking advantage and not seeing a win-win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not difficult for me to pick up myself, or you know, in the work. You remember, it's an age thing, right? So you remember Wurzel Gummidge? You remember?
I certainly do.
So
this
character would take off his head when he needed to be a different person, and he would just put on a different head. And I've used that analogy throughout my whole life, because there were times at Photokina I would represent like 5 or 6 different companies in a single day on stage. So you would have to put your Adobe head on, so you only see it from the perspective of Adobe, and then I would then have to, while walking to the Wacom stage, I'd have to take metaphorically, it would be like a cap or it would be a t-shirt, because I'd change t-shirt and I'd have a t-shirt on that had Wacom on it, and then I'd represent Wacom, and then sometimes I'd have to slag off Adobe because they deserve it, or I'd slag off Wacom when I'm with Adobe, and then Nikon, Epson, whatever. But changing heads, so I'm changing my head to try and be in the same space as you. And with my experience of the whole transition of digital, you know, from analog to digital, but not from a photography perspective, because that's just been the last thing that's happened. But to photographers, that's the only thing that's happened. But I watched it go from manual to digital way before photographers ever thought of digital anything. And so obviously the art of pixelating images onto hard drives and manipulating them in that form, that was done for 10 years before Adobe Photoshop came out. And to be honest, I mean, you know, the commercial, the serious commercial photographers never went digital just because the Nikon D100 came out, the first kind of quite serious SLR, most people looked at it and went, what, 8 megapixels? Are you joking? You can't do anything with that. No, you could do an A4 front cover with that quite happily, you know, and I used to do posters with it. So it was all done before, and so the paranoia and the frustration and the anger I just laugh at. Because it's like a lack of objectivity, and that I think is the thing. As you get older, you learn the ability of stepping out of being subjective. What the hell is that noise, man?
Unfortunately, they are trimming.
It's a road
the
cleaner.
hedges,
Oh,
and they're very nearly finished.
Oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool.
It's
So
a
look,
guy
so
with an electric trimmer.
yeah, cool. Well, I like it that you're in a urban kind of scene. It's good. I like it. So look, the first thing that came to mind, let's get into it. So the first thing that came up as a headline was I saw loads of people pissing and moaning about Adobe's ad, which says the word, skip the photo shoot, use AI. And look at your face. Just look at your face. Skip the photo shoot and use AI. What? How dare you attack my business? How dare you belittle me? How dare you say I'm not needed? So I see it from your point of view. You know, yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think photography did? What do you, not photographers, but what do you think digital photography did to an industry? To an industry of people, friends that I had who lost their jobs, some lost their houses, some, you know, they lost their way of life that was dependable, it was stable. The print and litho and design industry, when it was in that form, was a very, very stable environment. And desktop publishing came along, and I still had one foot in that industry. And then I'm then helping new people learn how to get good image quality in a dependable way and have workflow and get much, much higher results. What about those people? Are you just not now the next in line? You know what I mean? Should Adobe have any concern over, should they have any concern over photographers? Did photographers really give a shit about their labs that they used for decades to turn their film into images? I don't think I ever had a conversation with a photographer anywhere around the world where they shed a tear for their lab that went out of business. No one shed a tear.
Okay, so I'm going to be your first because I used to work for Sita, who were in Poland Street. I got to know Steve Kemp very well. I dispatched road for him. And when Metro came along and toppled them and Sita went out of business, the two twin brothers that ran the branches that they opened, I had a very close relationship with my dad. But then I think they're the sort of relationship that you've got to have for your clip tests and trust for balancing the films in those days. And probably there was no emotion in that until someone like Joe Spaceman went bust, like when Sita went bust, as a result of digital.
Now, my point is that in every technological revolution, there is always a consequence somewhere.
Certainly.
And this is what we're living in. And so when you look at what is causing this to happen, it's been quite stable for, let's say, 20 years, you could argue, maybe. It's been okay. You know, there's new cameras every 5 seconds. The mass hysteria over HDR, which came and went, and now it's AI. So it's AI everything now, everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere, you know. Don't learn to do it yourself. Just become a better writer. Just put your idea into here and let us write the text. What? And then you're gonna hold up your text and say, look what I did. All you've got to do now is type into a interface and a website will be built. Say what you do, what you're looking for, what is your target audience, and a website will be made. An app can be made. Of course there's going to be consequence here. Of course. So is it really that offensive when Adobe, I'm only playing devil's advocate here because it's appalling the way they behave, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. If you put your Wurzel Gummidge head on that you're an Adobe executive and you're not a photographer and you're not me and you're just Adobe, what are you working towards? Greater share price.
Keeping the shareholders happy.
Greater share price. And what would you be most paranoid about at the moment?
Any clues?
How is AI going to affect our position of monopoly and domination? Are we going to lose our position? Because they successfully gained the upper hand. I remember at the outset I remember when I came from Crossfield equipment and Cytex equipment and Hell equipment that turned into Linotype. And then I remember walking into this company called The Last Word in Putney, on Putney Bridge in London. And I saw a Mac 2FX and Photoshop 1 on a disc, on a single diskette. And I came from multi-million-pound installations. And then this is going to be the future. So you can imagine like how much contempt I had for it. And I had to learn how to use like 6 pieces of software, or 3 pieces of software basically, Quark, Illustrator and Photoshop, when none of them were good enough to do what we needed them to do. But look what it's turned into. And then at the time with Photoshop, because I'm very image orientated, I know page makeup and design and Illustrator and movies and everything and web, but the thing I'm really into is what I got into first, which is images. And so at the time of Photoshop 1, there was another program. I can't even remember what it's called now, it's so long ago, because it's like 35 years ago or 36 years ago now. But there was another program. And they were neck and neck, and they were fighting for dominance. But there was an alternative to Photoshop, because Photoshop was shite. But the other one, unfortunately, was really, really good from a user point of view, because you built what you wanted in proxy, in low resolution, because computers were insanely slow back then. And then when you had finished with your proofing on screen, you press a button and it would then replace everything with a high-res version. But unfortunately, in the rendering of the high-res version, there would be loads of mistakes. So you could wait 3 hours and then there would be a glitch in it which would negate 3 hours. And that's how it was back then. But in the marketing of a cheaper solution, people would wear that. And, you know, Adobe came out on top, you know, and through marketing, through listening to the print industry, upgrading Photoshop. The best upgrades to Photoshop were all in the first 5 years, because it was so crap. Every single new feature that came in was absolutely to make it usable by people like me. For instance, selective color. It's the only program that has selective, at the time, had selective color. So all print or imaging professionals thought in selective color, not HSL and HSB where you just wang stuff around on screen. You typed in what you wanted. So they become the dominant force. They purchase all their competitors. Remember Macromedia, remember Flash, remember Freehand, and remember PageMaker, was it? They just, you know, they did what all companies do. And so now they're the only option. And now there's another option, obviously Affinity. But guess what's happened to Affinity just recently? All the people blogging away saying, oh my God, you know, it's so much better if you go down this route. And they're all taking a deep breath right now because Affinity was just acquired by a really big group. And that really big group, do you really think they're going to see the growth of Adobe with the subscription model? And they're going to keep Affinity a subscription model? Do you really think they would do that?
No, but they made a great move of offering everything for 50% right now.
And if you put yourself in the position of not a photographer or
Exactly.
me, and I'm the person in that company sat around the boardroom. Now, what do we do? Well,
Sign 'em up.
just before we piss everybody off, let's get the sheepdogs out and get them all in and make hay,
Yeah.
because all these people are pissed because Adobe have done what they've done. Well, look what happened to Adobe when they went Creative Cloud. Was the market happy? No. Let me just show you what happened, because I've done a lot of messing around over this.
Good.
And I found out stuff which I had no idea.
It's certainly been reported well on the media through the different channels.
How many paid subscriptions do you think Adobe has right now? How
I'm
many
just gonna have to
people?
pick a number.
Come on. It's
8 billion people in the world. How many creatives? Because it's not just photographers, it's an enormous circle of creatives.
Yeah.
8 billion. Minimum 2 million accounts.
You think it's 2 million people, individuals, pay Adobe to subscribe to their Creative Cloud service?
As a first guess, I'm even
Right.
feeling
No,
that
that's
way
good.
off.
That's good. No, it's good. No. I'm just asking. Out of 8 billion, the markets that would be in the environment where you would want Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, Premiere. Well, no one uses Premiere anymore, but maybe After Effects, and probably nobody uses that anymore. 33 million. It's over 33. It's over 33 million. Let me show you. So this is the growth. And when you see the share price, the share price is the important thing. When you look at the share price over, I showed this before. So it was around about here when Creative Cloud started, right? So Adobe, in the hands of John Warnock, the guy who started it, and John Warnock's mentality, and this is really my view of this, is Adobe, Apple. If we just take both of those companies, they only became the companies that they are today because they were created by visionaries. People may not like them, but I haven't spoken to a single person who has ever said Apple have turned into something much better now that Steve Jobs hasn't got his hands on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The problem is all companies go through an evolution, and then when they go through the evolution, the old people go and the new people come in, and when you look at that utter moron, Tim Cook, I cannot watch anymore. I used to religiously sit in front of the screen. When I worked with Apple in the UK, we used to be invited to come in and then watch with all the staff the next presentation. And you would know that somewhere in this presentation, Apple would be changing their computers, that I would then be able to go to my customers as a consultant and say, you need to keep an eye on this because this can change your workflow. We can save 20% here. Those days are over. Those days are gone. And now it's just bean counters. It's just bean counters now. And also with the internet coming along and making these huge companies global, they're too big now to fail. So I love listening to all the people bitching and moaning about Adobe, and they deserve to bitch and moan about them maybe. But an individual dropping their subscription, which is another huge point of contention, which I had no idea about, because I've never tried to cancel my subscription. I had no idea.
It's a minefield.
It's a nightmare. And no wonder they're being sued by the US government. Because I got sent this today by one of the members of the website. US sues Adobe over bad business practice with their subscriptions. The point is that everything is about money now. and everything is about share price. And the problem is you have to be very objective to be able to do that. And when you look at this, this shows a picture of massive growth. But when you change it to just 1 year, this is the important bit for me. You know, this ad that went out, which said skip the photo shoot. Do you not think that around the marketing table, there would have been a couple of executives who will go, oh my God, I need to get my crash helmet on because there is going to be so much flack coming in my direction or in our direction. But the voices from above would be saying, we need to do this. We need to test the water. Now, we need to test the water to see how people react. How many of our subscriptions are we going to lose? Look at the growth.
Seemingly they've got their toes burned now.
Look at the growth. At the time of the year when they would have been deciding about this, how are we going to market AI? Who are we going to market it to? And this particular ad that went out and just sent people absolutely batshit crazy, that I don't know, how long does that take? 2 months for you to come up? Maybe even a quarter. You know, you don't just get together with a group of people and go, what ad should we send out next week? I mean, it's usually you have a year, at least a year, maybe 18 months in advance, and you have a number of stages. And so this ad that went out, that would have been deeply thought about. That they wouldn't have done that for fun. You know what I mean?
My guy, the dip on the graph, was that COVID? So are they reacting to the losses of COVID, or would they have even had?
No. COVID did nothing but make it better for Adobe.
Exactly, because where more people had time to.
So look, exactly. So this is it here. COVID's here. That's its biggest point of elevation. But my point is, look at it here. Look at it here. This area here, when it's at its highest, is February this year.
Gosh.
My idea, the way I would think about it is that the actual drop starts around about here. So that's March time. When you're looking at this share price and you're Adobe and executives sitting in your little boardroom or in your little meetings and going, oh, what should we do next? How are we going to get AI out here? It's going to be buoyed with the fact that your share price is what it is right now, because they can't see that dip that's happening. When you look at this, if all you look at this from a share point of view, you'd go batshit crazy, right? You'd be, oh my God, what have we done? What have we done? But that isn't how you've got to look at it. You've got to look at it over the entirety. This tiny little drop is nothing. The subscription numbers are 33 million today. I had no idea that it was that.
$10 a month. That's an enormous
I had
amount of
no
money.
idea. And when you look at their profits, regardless of what they do, regardless, and absolutely, I'm on the side of people, because the only thing you can do when you feel aggrieved by the company that you pay is take your business elsewhere. It's fine, but to get on YouTube and make a video and try and create some kind of a hand-holding experience of, you know, just stop oil and let's all get together and take down Adobe, not a chance, not a hope in hell. Because there is no way on earth somebody who works at the higher level of professional, because obviously, you know, I've argued for a long time that there should be different words that describe the different levels of hierarchy in photography. Okay, because you say the word photographer and it needs to have another word next to it that tells you who you're talking about. So somebody who works on an ad, that photographer is working in a group of people, group of creatives. They are one part of the process, and those people will have had how many years? Like me, I've got, from Photoshop 1, I got over like 36 years experience of using the software. I couldn't give a damn about the software anymore. I've given up learning new features because they're all crap. They do nothing for me. I still look at them to see if they fall under the crap heading, but I can't remember the last thing that happened to Adobe Photoshop that made me go, whoa, now that really is a game changer. I'm used to seeing people who go, yeah, I'm a retoucher, and this new AI generative fill, I can just make a selection over this car and it makes it go away. This is a game changer because it saves me having to do it. And I just think to myself, you moron.
What are you doing in this?
What is you in it anymore? If all you're going to do is allow the tools to do it for you, where are you in the process? Like, what's your bit then? And if all it does is devalue and devalue and devalue, which has happened to imaging. I mean, imaging was outrageously expensive when I was a scanner operator. I mean, the minimum size image, if a designer made an advert, the minimum image to be scanned to put into the films was £20. 45 years ago, it was £20. I only got paid £24 a week when I started work. I got paid £24 a week, and when I started scanning, the minimum price of a scan to go into an A4 page was, I think the first scan was £10, and if it was a second, every next one it was double. It was 20. What is it now? What would be the value of a single image today? Nothing. There is no value. So we only give value by giving volume. Volume of substandard, lesser standard. And so if this has slowly been happening for decades, is it any surprise that this company that has us by the gonads, I mean, they really do. 33 million subscribers, do they really give a damn? Even if they lost 5 million to Affinity, how long before Affinity go down the same route? How long?
Yeah.
The company that have just acquired them are looking at this and they're just
It'll
going...
be at the second renewal stage, because they'll behave for the first year and then get you to renew, and then on the second renewal they'll adopt the practices that other people seem to make work.
Well, Capture went the subscription model. If Capture was the first company that went down a subscription model, they would have gone bust. Well, that part of their business would have gone bust. Nobody would have done it. But Adobe were the people who could take on the industry, and they did, and they changed. They Jedi mind tricked everybody. If you want it, well, then this is how it's going to be delivered to you. And I don't know. I don't remember having a conversation with anybody in the industry that was happy about Adobe going down a subscription model, but that was when did they do that? It was a very long time ago now. Do I even remember it anymore? No, not at all, because it's normal now. It's just normal now.
No, actually do a clever version of that by making it brand specific.
Yeah.
It was just as you say, probably straight away they could one in their marketing department who was bowing to the shareholders realized that you had a Fuji version.
Your connection is really bad again. It will probably. There's nothing you can do about it. It will come back, I'm sure. Well, the thing that this, you hear the word rabbit hole, right? So when now, because of how it works, you maybe go on YouTube and you do a search and you listen to somebody bitching and moaning about an ad. Then that leads you in the offering with the algorithm to see a few other people bitching about the best thing that really makes me laugh. Adobe training. I mean, in the ad, they're saying to creative, like designers, oh, you don't need a photographer. Just use AI. And how are they training the AI? On photographers' images.
Yeah.
Look, you couldn't write it, could you? It's amazing.
No, you just have to go underwater and watch what the sharks do.
It's just... And that I do have. I mean, I don't have an issue with the ad, because photographers in a sense, it wasn't a choice by them to put repro companies and retouchers and scanner operators out of business. That's just life. It's evolution. You know, everything. But they were the beneficiaries. Okay, my image. Not for very long. It won't be.
No.
The next exposure for next week. I was going to try and dovetail in this thing that has consumed my imagination now. For about a week now. I consume about 4 or 5 hours just listening to it in the background while I'm working. But yeah, there's if you really think that skip the photo shoot is the thing to lose your crap about, yeah, that isn't at all. The thing we're going to talk about next week is something, for me, really does like spell out what the future is going to be for an enormous amount, and not the people at the bottom of the end of the wedge. It's actually the people at the top end of the wedge. Okay. And I was going to bring it in today, but I don't think we'll have time today, and also it would dilute it. It would be too many different things. So Adobe actually changing. And they always do it so nefariously, don't they? They do it very secretively. And who really sits there and reads the T's and C's? I've never read them in my life, but I let other people do it, and now other people can say, oh, I read it, and this is what has happened. And then you find out that, yeah, they're now training. They have been for quite some time, because it isn't just the last change in the terms and conditions. It was the time before this came in. Yeah. It was a long time. So for a very long time, they've been training the thing to use against you commercially on the things that you put up online. They're all just indicators of how they think, right?
Absolutely.
That's the message to me. It's like, who is thinking this is a cool idea? Who is thinking this?
People that are born without souls.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see why you would say that, but obviously I spent a very long part of my life, I spent about 16 to 18 years in the middle of the revolution of tech and stuff with imaging, and worked for a number of companies, the main ones, Adobe and Apple. I was offered many positions by both companies, but and there was one particular position by Adobe, and I actually allowed myself to actually fantasize about it and think, oh my God, if I was to take that job. And so it wasn't about the hook, about how good that job would be. It was, can I live with the negative? And the thing that caused me to leave Crossfield, I was 21, when I was flying around the world installing and teaching scanning, which is like insanity, isn't it? When you think about it. And the thing that caused me to leave Crossfield was actually my friends, the people I'd made friends with at work. Because there was no internet back then, no mobile phones, nothing personal computer anywhere. And when I wasn't in another country doing my job, I'd be just at Hemel Hempstead, sat around a big square table with all the other people that hadn't been sent anywhere, and we'd just tell our stories, because we were globetrotters back then, you know, when it cost a lot of money to do that, and only a few people would do it. And I would listen to the stories, and then there were a couple of people, and I really enjoyed their company, and I would call them friends. But I would listen to them, and the thing that caused me to leave really quickly was the fact that I didn't want to turn into them. They'd been so institutionalized by this globe-trotting thing. The only thing they could ever talk about is what airport they've just left, and what hotel they stayed at, and what really nice restaurant they went to, which is cool, and it affects everybody, and you have to allow it to do that. But I just thought, I never want, I don't want to be that. And I just found that. And because I became very aware of that, then when I was doing the Adobe thing and rubbing shoulders with all the Apple people, I can't allow an institution to turn me into that, because I don't want that perspective on life. And like you said, from the outside looking in, you would brand them as soulless, and they are, because they only care about one thing: share price. and what they can do to get up their corporate ladder. So training AI on people's images and not being upfront about it. You didn't see anything about that on the Adobe website. Hey, by the way, if you don't want us to do it, then what you have to do is just go into these 2 different places in your Creative Cloud account and you can stop it. I didn't find anywhere on the Adobe website. I didn't look too deeply, but you would have thought if they were not soulless scum, they would at least say, if you don't want us using your images, they would be just as, here's AI, and we have to train it on something, so we're using you, and if you don't want us to use you, here's the way to stop it. They didn't do that. And obviously we went through it the other day.
But in your opinion, how much time do you think they spent on saying, you know, let's turn this absolutely around and sort of welcome people that use their services and platform to go on a journey with them and opt in rather than opting out? That's the crux for me. That means you're a million miles away from win-win.
If they'd have just said, hey, if you love this AI thing and you're a supporter of it, we would love your help and support. And all you have to do, by default, the software, when it updates, it will have it turned off. And if all you did was made a little proclamation, we would love your help. We need to help our AI. So all we need you to do, if you'd like to help us, and be really nice and ask politely and say please and thank you, they would have found what percentage of their 33 million users would turn around and go, yeah, I'll give you a hand. I'll take quite a lot. But if you emotionally piss people off because you have no manners, no respect, and you make your users feel like you are just a pawn in a game of chess, they're going to do what I did. Now, I went into the 2 areas in the software and it was already turned off, and I never got a terms and agreement notification on my Creative Cloud interface to say that I have to agree. I've never had that. So I've seen screenshots from other people show that, you know, they're not giving me an opt-out here. I have to say yes. I never saw it.
Did you mention earlier that may have been regional? Because I got it, and that's what woke me up to it.
It could be that it's regional. It could be. I don't know. I don't care. I mean, look, I see that it affects you and I see that it affects other people, and that's all I care about. It doesn't affect me. And even if it was turned on, I don't use Behance. I mean, I can't think of a worse thing. It's like likes. I have no respect for likes. I don't care about subscribing. I don't do anything because I want to inflate those numbers. So sharing my work and using their equivalent to Facebook, which I think is the place where they will utilize the images. Because the thing that really concerned me was when I first saw the people talking about this, I was thinking, well, they've got access to my hard drive and they'll go and find PSD files. I don't think so. I'm not too sure. I can't say definitively that I know 100% that isn't the case, but I doubt it very much. I'm sure it's only a cloud-based thing. The things that I put up in their cloud storage, which I never use, ever, for that reason. I want no dependency on them. So I want to be able to ditch it when I want to, like this, without having to worry. So I've never used their cloud service for anything. But yeah, AI needs training. I just purely because I'm a problem solver, so I don't want something to solve the problem for me. When I see in an image or I see in a job or I see in life an issue, a problem, something being done what I feel takes way too long, and then the end game is substandard. I'm workflow orientated, I'm solution orientated, so it wouldn't be my natural thing to do to go, oh, I can reduce the amount of time by 80% by just letting it do it for me. I couldn't breathe if I turned to AI, so I'm never going to be an AI user, ever, period. But I'm interested in seeing how it evolves. And all AI has to be trained somewhere, doesn't it? It has to be brought up. Well, there's this really cool thing that I watched a very long time ago now, which I'll just show you. Because, you know, the ChatGPT shit has been around for quite some time. At first, I responded to the blip on my radar when it was ChatGPT 2. I've never used it. I have no interest in it. I am never going to be a user. But I watched this from CoffeeZilla. Do you know CoffeeZilla?
Nope.
I would encourage everybody who sees this to just... This is the Open AI Chief Technical Officer in an interview with a woman. I'm not going to play it. I'm just going to show you this. And you see this look in her face? This is because she just gets asked. Because she walks into this interview just with the chest out. Look what we've built. We've now got OpenAI is now working on images. We can make it do this. We can make it do this. And video. I think it's when it moves into video. It was a while ago I watched this, and then the interviewer turns around and says to her, "How did you train? How did you train it? What did you point it at to teach it how to do what it does? Did you use YouTube videos?" That's all she asked. It's best to watch it with the sound off, actually, and put subtitles on, because it's just the facial recognition. Everybody knows when someone is lying. Everybody knows when someone is trying to put on a happy face, but in their brain they're going, "I'm screwed and I need to come up with a sentence that just bypasses this whole thing." And she it's amazing. It's just amazing. So, you know, and CoffeeZilla's fantastic. And anyway, this is Voidzilla, this spin-off channel that he does. And but this is a fantastic interview, because AI has to be trained. And on that basis, my view is, it's not intelligence, for Christ's sake. You're telling it what to do. It's not intelligence.
How did she dig herself out of the hole that she's so efficiently done?
She really didn't. Because it doesn't matter what words you say after you let your face paint this picture that you've been caught. Of course you showed it YouTube, but she didn't have the balls to turn around and say so. Why? Could you imagine what would happen if she turned around and said, yeah, for about 6 months we just pointed it at YouTube and said, "Go have fun"?
Oh dear. Well,
clearly that's what they did.
Government sort of things, and thankfully the American government's got involved, because I'm pretty sure that they don't want anybody rifling around in their private drawer.
Absolutely. But it's
so there's a bit of hope at the end of the rainbow. No, at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, let me get my next thing.
Okay. But then again, we could expand this. Do you trust any cloud-based system? Look what Amazon do.
Of course
Look
not.
what Google do with your docs and things like that. Because again, if you go in the TNCs, you know.
Look, it's not because I don't trust the trust. Is it? I'm gonna contradict myself here. I don't trust geeks. Okay, I just don't trust geeks, and it's not that I don't trust them not to, when I leave my wallet on the desk and I go and get a coffee, it's not that I don't trust them not to go through my wallet and steal my money, not at all. But they're so easily led. And you've only got to look at, I'd say to anybody, just go and look at the beginning of Facebook. Go and look at the beginning of Microsoft. Both of these companies, which are some of the biggest companies, and I know there'll be people that say, "Oh, Steve Jobs stole from that company,
Yeah, there's always a story
Xerox.
behind
They didn't
everything,
say
like
it.
Zuckerberg.
It's just insane when people say that Apple stole from Xerox. They didn't. They had a partnership where they shared ideas and technology, and they walked away from a Xerox meeting and turned Xerox's idea, their concept, into something that could work when Xerox hadn't, because they didn't want to go down a graphical user interface. They wanted line code. And you can't put them in the same category as Bill Gates, who, when he just happened to be at the right place at the right time and be invited into a meeting, but to go into that meeting, he needed an operating system. He, Mr. I don't have a creative bone in my body, stole Windows from his best friend. He stole it. That is a world of difference. And then look at Zuckerberg. Just a nobody. And then somebody gives him this spark, and he lies to their faces for months and months and months and absolves himself of responsibility because he hands them an enormous check. That's what I don't trust. And when you look at this whole AI thing and you see all the players who are all positioning on the chessboard, I don't trust any of them. And my attitude towards AI was born out of a fantastic documentary about Go. Have you ever seen it? The story of Go.
Nope.
When the AI freaks, all of them, a bunch of freaks, just tapping keyboards, who just... I mean, if the world champion had just found a tall building and jumped, I wouldn't have been surprised. They just decimated him. They just ended his being. He had dedicated his whole life in becoming the world champion in one of the hardest strategy games there is to play, one of the oldest games in history. And these freaks with ones and zeros come along and go, yay, patting themselves on the back, yeah, we won, we won. It's not intelligence. You had to give it the rules. It didn't teach itself how to play Go. A human could just watch a game of chess, never have even seen a game of chess, and would just by watching a game of chess would be able to learn how to play. AI wouldn't be able to do that. I've had a number of conversations over quite a few years now with people I know who are coders, and I always ask them the same question, just to see their reaction visually, their face expression, not the words they say. And I go, is it possible for a computer to be intelligent like we would consider us to be intelligent? Not one of them has ever said yes. What drives you?
I had a reverse of that the other week, where someone's seemed to believe that he had the only computer in the world that could change settings on its own without an instruction.
It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, because it's all meant to be made in our own vision, right? In our own image. Artificial intelligence, we're not comparing it to rabbit intelligence, are we? We're comparing it to human intelligence. Like, will we be able to converse? Of course, given it enough time and let it read enough books, and it can have a conversation with me, I'm sure. But what drives human beings? What is the force that drives us? It's not ones and zeros in our brain. Where does emotion come from? Hormones.
Chemistry.
Tell me how you code hormone response in a computer. I would argue you can't. You might be able to create the illusion of it, but you can't. And then I would also be asking myself, should I? If I could, should I? And
remember burning your hand the first time?
Exactly. And the thing that really, the reason why I have such skepticism and contempt for geeks is one of the best films that came out last year, Oppenheimer, right? One of the best. Did you ever see it?
No, you know what I'm like. I haven't had a television for 40 years, and I think I know all the kids' films from my children growing up.
Right.
After that, I
Okay.
find my blockage is continuity.
So I knew about the story of Oppenheimer and everything, but I didn't know it to the level of detail that occurred. I knew that there was this point in time, very close to when they let off the test, and the geeks, of which obviously they are, they all sat there masturbating, basically, self-gratification over, look what we're making. And then there was this part in the film where there's a big red button and there's a finger to let it off. But the reason why he hesitated was because they actually believed there was a high probability that letting off this nuclear weapon for the first time would set fire to the atmosphere, and no one would have been able to have predicted what would happen. And there was a very small probability that it could end humanity because of that. Did it stop him pushing the button? Not at all. And that, to me, is humans. All they care about is ego. I want my name to go down. It has to go down. It's got to have my name in history. It doesn't matter what the consequence to other people is. And that's the same thing with AI right now. It's the same thing with Adobe putting it in. They know how much they're disrupting their market, but they don't give a shit. They've got 33 million people subscribing to them. You can't even begin to imagine the money that flows through their accounts. And the best part of this is then when John Warnock, he was the guy who started Adobe. He would never have done this. The same as when I watched that crap thing from Apple the other day and I posted, Steve Jobs would have found a tall building and jumped if he was alive watching his company turn into what Apple have turned into. I have absolutely no respect anymore after watching that last thing. So I went in and I wanted to see if John Warnock still has any involvement. He's a massive shareholder. He's got 400,000 shares, which amounts to over $200 million. And so he should. He built the company. It was his invention. He built it with his friend from a garage. They built PostScript, that thing that enables you to have scalable fonts that caused the digital revolution, not the photography digital revolution, the real revolution that happened all those years ago. When artwork was on a board and I had to go in and photograph it, and then I had to massive piece of film that had a unit cost of about £20. If I screwed up an exposure, I'd lose my job. You had to be precise, then you had to spot it out. And then we had scalable fonts, man, scalable logos. He has nothing to do with it anymore. I'm sure he's still on the board from time to time, but he's way too old. So who runs Adobe? That's what I wanted to know. Oh my God. If there's anybody out there who just wants to bitch and moan about, subscription prices and cancellation, that's okay. But that's the magician's distraction tactic, so they can perform the magic trick. And if you allow yourself to get fooled by the hand moving over here, well, then the joke's on you, okay? And wow, that's amazing. The real thing, the ownership structure. BlackRock and Vanguard. They don't own all of it. But Vanguard owns over 8%, and I think it's now over 9% because this is old. This is 2022. This is 2 years ago. But this was I just needed a graphic that would show BlackRock and Vanguard. So all I would say to anybody who's interested, if you don't know anything about BlackRock and Vanguard, just go onto YouTube and listen to a few people talking about it. You'll be very, very hard pushed to find anybody talking about either of those companies
in a positive vein,
in a positive way, who doesn't work for them. I don't know, when I see some of the things that I see in life happening right now, this DEI, okay, diversity, inclusivity, yeah, none of it's good, right? Because it's all forced. You can change a few things and then wait for society to decide itself how it meanders its way in evolution. But that isn't what's happening right now. It's being forced. So you have to ask yourself, how is it being forced? And it's being forced by BlackRock and Vanguard, because they are the people that have the DEI index. And if Adobe wants money to fund AI, to raise money to be able to fund the AI extravaganza, they're going to have to go to their shareholders and say, hey, we'd like whatever it is, a couple of billion. Yeah, well, you're only going to get it if you adhere to our DEI index. And if you have a low DEI score, you get no money. So my question is, it's just a question to the universe really, is I wonder how much BlackRock and Vanguard, given that they've got big seats at the Adobe directorship, steering wheel level, they've got a big stake. I mean, the money that they have invested in Adobe means, I think when they speak, I'm sure Adobe as a company, I'm sure they listen when BlackRock says anything and Vanguard says anything. And Vanguard is also a massive investor into BlackRock. BlackRock is like this behemoth. It's the thing that rules the world right now. I can't help but now taste the fingers of BlackRock running through all of the mayhem that's going on right now about Adobe. And it's like everything in management. The worst place in the world to be in management is in the middle, right? Because you're screwed from below and you're screwed from above. And when you look at this tiny little logo of Adobe at the bottom, well, underneath that, you've got me and you, people who subscribe, our customers. So if you're Adobe in a board meeting or in a high-level executive meeting, when you're being spoken to by your users or you're being spoken to by BlackRock and Vanguard, who do you listen to? Who has greater clout?
BlackRock.
Of course. Of course.
And so to follow that on, what if they lose this, or they've got to regain whatever they've alienated in the market? What can we expect as the next surprise?
Nothing is ever going to happen to Adobe. Just like banks, right? I mean, too big to fail? How in 2008, all of the owners of the banks just watch Margin Call. There's a film. I know it's only a film, and it's only it's a make-believe story about a true thing that happened. The inner workings of these investment companies, and just the contempt, the utter contempt they have for humans, for their share price.
Absolutely.
That's all you have to see. And all I know is this is happening here. Adobe are never going to fail. I mean, if they went through a prolonged period of people just jumping overboard and then going to something else, they can't go to anything else. A certain portion of the market can. A sole photographer, and most photographers work on their own, right? Most. The vast majority of photographers are sole traders. They don't work as a part of a team. Team is, I'll make an image and send it to you as a PSD, a PNG, a JPEG, or a TIFF, and that's teamwork. And so your file doesn't have to be compatible with the next person in the process, but going down, say, like an ad that goes into a magazine, although, it's not the most common way of working, if you need to be compatible with the next person in the workflow, you need to all use the same software. So as the photographer is like the tail wagging the dog. If the photographer says, yeah, I'm going to be using Affinity now, well, you'll lose your position because the design executive is going to establish that you need to give me a PSD file. I don't care what your opinion is. If you want to work on this project, I need somebody working in Photoshop. I need somebody working in Illustrator. Less now demands that workflow because obviously most things now just go immediately digital. But they will lose for a period of time. But all stock and share prices go up and down. And nobody ever reacts, knee-jerk reacts. I just believe what they've done is they've just put their toe in the water to see what the market reaction is. Whoa, it's not too cool. But what they've done is I've been in boardrooms and I've listened to people say this. You know, I used to get called in to some board meetings to just sit there and watch. And the chairman would just sit there. I would know them personally, and they would know that I know my stuff. And I would just sit there and I would listen to the IT company saying what they're going to do. This is why it's all good. This is why it's all bad. And I would make little notes. And then I would just go and have a beer with the person afterwards and say, yeah, that was a crock of shit. You should never go anywhere near them. You know, it's just lies. It's just complete lies. They're presuming you know nothing. The knee-jerk reaction to this is just not what we should really be looking at. It's like, who controls this? They might lose a few people, absolutely. But they don't give a flying fart about individual users, because individual users do not establish the norm in an industry. They just don't.
Nope.
And Affinity Photo, I am sure, or Affinity, that has now gone into, can't remember the name of the group that have bought them. That's a group that have bought them. And is it Canva? Yeah, Canva. So my next thing is to look at Canva. Let's look at stocks and shares. Who owns Canva? I can bet that you're going to see one of these two names and you're probably going to see both of them. And they're just going to be playing one against the other. And the thing is that you sometimes have to just gauge the reaction. You know yourself, you have no intention of actually doing anything. But your 5-year plan is, we want to make an enormous structural change to the foundation of how we work with our customers. If we just go and do it, they will go batshit crazy and we're going to lose loads of them and we could run foul of that. So what you do is, way before you want to do it, what you do is you just put it out there. With never an intention that we're going to do it right now, but we're going to do it much later. And then we're just going to listen to the backlash. And then we're going to change our plan. They're going to do what they want to do regardless of what anybody does. But what they're doing is feeling it. And that Ryanair, you must know about Ryanair, right? The guy who runs Ryanair, seriously, I refuse to fly Ryanair. I don't think there is a human that I had more contempt for than him. Michael something. You know, when I can get a flight cheaper than the cab from my house to the airport, and I'm only living 10 miles from the airport, and my flight is cheaper than the cab, you know there is something wrong, right? There has to be something wrong with that. And I remember that he put in the press, he allowed into the press that Ryanair we're going to put like a slot machine on the toilet and it was going to cost you €2 to go to the toilet. Now they never did it, right? But they let it go in the press. And then they probably had a team of people watching social media, seeing the uproar, and they will just measure the uproar. It's not, is there any uproar? It's to what degree? Can we actually get away with this? And it could
That's
well
where
be
we're at,
that,
and I think the bank
yeah,
started it, didn't they? The minute that they
yeah.
took the human contact out, and they forgot that they were actually privileged to make interest of what we trusted them with, I think that was probably one of the biggest shards coming off the cliff. And then everyone thought, okay, well, that's good. That's a guaranteed profit, fast, least line of resistance. And as you say, they're numbers, so who gives a fuss?
Well, all I know is since 2008, how many banking executives, how many banking directors went to prison because of what they did? Not one.
Sorry, it's the lawnmower just going past, and I won't turn it around, but you should see the state of this lawnmower. I think it sort of survived from the 40s.
Well,
What
from
would
what
actually, what would have to happen to actually make you think that it was time to change? What would be the
what
factors involved?
change what for me to change?
Get rid of, yeah. Or
Nothing.
is there
Nothing will
nothing they
change.
would do? Exactly.
Nothing will change. Nothing.
Doesn't that fuel their
I
argument or
guess.
their lack of
Well,
conscience?
I guess the thing that would cause me to change is when all of my members of the website all moved to Affinity, and then they would say, "Guy, can you have a look at it and help us make more sense of it?" Affinity has just done nothing but just simply copy Photoshop forever. And the first question I had about Affinity, because I bought it in the beginning, I bought it when I was still living in Ireland, and it doesn't bother me. It didn't matter to me, the Affinity, when I was judging feature for feature. I couldn't at that time, I couldn't write actions, I couldn't make scripts, so I couldn't do what I do in Photoshop in image processing. So then from that point of view, on a personal basis, I'm not interested. I just wanted to see, does it have basic things? Do I have use of channels? It was the first software that had come out that had given use of channels. And I saw on a couple of Facebook things and a few YouTube things that people just go, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing. Yeah, that's what photographers did 30 years ago when someone showed them how to use a channel. It's the most amazing thing. And, you know, we've been doing that for like 20 years at that point. It's not amazing, and it wasn't made for photographers. And then photographers attach the word luminosity to a channel because it's a statement of grandeur, isn't it? It's not. You can't make a mask of luminosity, you monkey. It's not possible. But we'll call it luminosity because it makes me feel better about what I'm doing. But yeah, the thing that turned my head away from it, in terms of I wouldn't be able to, with a straight face, tell the membership that, hey, this is a really cool option. What I do with all software, just to let people know, let you know, is when my first test for software is very, very simple. I take a range of images, and then what I do is I just put them in the converter, the raw converter, and I save it. I don't do anything with it because I need to see what the default of the program does, what the default does, and I then compare them. And Affinity was nearly as bad as Capture. I mean, look, if you've only ever seen Affinity, then you won't know. So it's very subjective, it's not objective. If I'm going to say something, I have to research it a bit. And so I'll take all of the raw converters, which I have, and then I just put an image in. And just like film, when you was a film photographer, when I was a scanner operator, and very rarely, but from time to time, a photographer would come in with the design client or the creative editor, and I think probably only on a handful of occasions was the photographer ever involved in the retouching stage. But when I get talking to a photographer, they never defined themselves by what camera they used and what lens they used. They defined themselves by the film that they chose. Exactly. So the job, when you were given a job and it was inside, outside, whatever, it's model, it's this product, you would know there's a wide range of different films at my disposal here. And for this job, I can just go and get the film that fits this job perfectly, right? Not the camera. And the problem now is that, in a sense, the film feel is baked into your camera. A Nikon image is not the same as a Canon image, not the same as a Fuji. And so I want to see, from an interpreter's point of view, a raw converter. I just need to see what the base conversion engine does before I do anything. I don't care about the sliders that they have. I try my best not to use them. I just need to know what their engine is. And aperture, as you know, was my thing, not because I was working with Apple, and it wasn't because I loved the software and all the features. I loved it because it gave me the best image without doing anything. The raw converter engine that wasn't even in aperture, it was in the operating system. It gave the best image, it gave the best skin tones, it gave me the best image to then work with. And every other raw converter was worse, being objective. And I know this because when I used to do seminars, I would take printouts and I would get rid of the name so nobody could say, and I would put them up on the side, and then I would just say, tell me, put them in the order of which image you think is just best for you. Put them in the order of hierarchy. Not once did anybody take the Apple one and put it at the bottom. It was always at the top because it had the most natural skin tones. The skin tone, and if you want to know, speak to Vadim in Montreal. Man, if there was a human alive that is obsessed with skin tones, it's him. And so when I looked at Affinity and I saw the debacle that it did in the actual conversion of my file into a preview, it was like, why would I even begin to look at it? It was the worst. It was awful. So just because I want to be in love with the software, I have to set aside my idea of what quality is. I don't think so. So it's a rip-off. It's just a copy. And good. It's good that there's an option for people, and it's really good. Any market has to have competition, right, for it to be healthy. Monopoly is really bad everywhere. So it's really good, and I hope it really works. It will never get my vote because I can't do what I do in Photoshop in it. I hope it works, but I am sure that within 12 months they'll go down a subscription model. It will be in the next few years at least, where there will be a subscription model. Because everybody makes more money.
The market suggests that that's what it's going to be.
Especially when they get more users. When they get more users, that will be the reason why they go to a subscription model.
They could get it right, though, if they did a subscription with the sort of numbers that we're talking about, or even the losses that Photoshop might make, make it also financially attractive.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you look at share price and what has happened with Adobe, okay, this is what I believe. This is what I believe should happen with Adobe. Where is it? Share price. Here, let's go back to it. So when you look at what happened to Adobe because of CC, there's different perspectives that you can look at. But I was looking at their quarterly financials, looking at all the income that comes in 3 months, and then the cost of sale at the bottom. It's just nothing, because it's just servers, right? That's all it is. And a tech team. It's a tech team and servers. So their cost to service is next to nothing in comparison to the profit that they make. They could halve. They could halve the subscription. Why is it so damn expensive given how shit your service is to your clients? They've Jedi mind tricked people into how it used to be with, say, Photoshop 1 to Photoshop 2, Photoshop 2 to 2.5, and then 3. In those days, the amount of effort that would go into giving an update to software was huge. They would have to make a box, a manual, make DVDs and CDs or whatever it was, diskettes, and then they would hire people like me to run around the world showing people how to use it in great big theaters and stuff. the cost of sale was like ridiculous in some of the big shows that we used to go to. Now it's not. The profit that you are making, how does that justify nothing every year? You keep saying that there's this new version. There is no new version. They've been doing for at least 10 or 15 years what supermarkets do to make their regular customers feel like something new has happened. They just move shit around. They put your bread in a different place. They put the baked beans in a different place. They move the Parma ham to a different place. Why do they do that?
Exactly.
Because we get into patterns of behavior. So when I used to go to Tesco's, I'd never looked on the aisles. I didn't need to, because I know the list of things that I need. I can be in dumb autonomous mode, and I can just fill my basket without even looking at the shop. That causes moving things around, means that they make more money, because they make it feel like it's fresh and new, and then you can't find the thing that you want, and so you have to scan the aisle, and then you go, oh, that's a bit interesting. I might try one of those. Now, normally I would never have even seen it because I wouldn't have been looking. So the same technique of moving shit around to just make it look fresh and new is what Adobe have been doing for 15 years. And they've just been treading water. There's been nothing that would make you go, damn, that was worth £200. It was about £170 to upgrade from Photoshop 5 to Photoshop 6. It was always around 200 quid. Every 18 months there would be an update. And to justify it, you really needed, as Adobe, to put something in it to make the user feel. That is, I'm glad I did that. I may not even use it, but I'm glad the software is getting better. And it's not. It's just a Jedi mind trick. Every year now, you just get the new one. And the only thing is about de-skilling it and turning it into crap with AI. There is a side to AI, which we're going to talk about next week, because I can't wait to show you this thing that I found. You will hate it. But you have to also go, damn, I didn't see that happening at this point in time. I would see that as the end game. I thought we were at the beginning, and we're not. We're at the end game already. If you think, I mean, in the ad that Adobe says, skip the photo shoot, in one of them, I think it was the ad. I never even saw the ad. I just saw a couple of websites that mentioned the ad. But I think I saw it the other day, and it's just all about a creative company that made a mask around a bottle and AI put a background in. Cool. What's wrong with that? Photographers don't do that shit anyway. They take a picture of the bottle, right? That's what you would do. You'd have a designer, you'd have a creative designer that would come up with a background. Why shouldn't they do that? The stuff I've been looking at the last week is just, yeah, I'm glad I'm my age, because I want no part of it. But I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued at just watching and seeing what happens in the next couple of years. Because this, what we've been talking about, is nothing. Do you think we could do this out of AI, so that 2 nights before you start talking to the computer, and effectively we don't even need to be here, but we could present ourselves? Of course not. Of course not. And honestly, who would really want that world? Who would want that world? You know, this is the thing. The thing about AI, you see Elon Musk talk about it. He doesn't really have too many positive things to say. And the reason being is that he funded the beginning of OpenAI. He funded it. The person, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy who was in the news, I'm so surprised that shook hands, took the millions, created a team, made a product, and went, oh shit, man, this could make a massive change to the world, and we could become billionaires just like you, Elon. So, you know that deal that we had? See ya. It's not open source, it's closed source now. Closed source, let's make loads of money. Yeah. It's all about money. And anything that they say that doesn't say it's all about money is just bullshit. It's a Jedi mind trick. So It's no. And the thing is, I've been around manufacturers, and I've been on one, working with Adobe. I would present for Adobe one day, and the very next day I would be at a client's, and I'd be taking on their problems and showing them how to do things better. So I would jump the divide between manufacturer and client every day, all the time. And I never stayed too long in one, so I became indoctrinated into it. So I've been a user for a long time, and I've worked with the companies for a long time. And I've been in loads of meetings where people come up with shit to put in software, and then they have to have countless meetings to work out how to market it, which is really the tail wagging the dog. The market needs you to do this. But you don't do it because it's not cool and sexy. It's what they need. But you and your geeks come up with shit that impresses you, and then you have to then hire a marketing company to Jedi mind trick the message to make the users feel that they need it. Why don't you just give people what they want? That would be fantastic. And the best one for this was, in the days before, I only had one claim to fame in Photoshop. I was invited by Adobe, and this was before I was a consultant to Adobe. I don't even know how they got my name. I think it was through somebody who had worked with them, but I was invited to Heathrow. This was before laptops and before mobile phones, and I was invited to go to a meeting with the head of Adobe, and I was just in this room with a flip chart. And all the shit that we had in our heads, we had to draw on pictures. We had to draw them. and I was really struggling with a few techniques that I'd used in lithographic darkrooms to change the color of something. And so I walk in this room, and there's about 8 of us, all from different parts of the industry. And after all the bullshit had ended in the meeting, he just said, "Look, is there anything you'd like to see in the software that isn't in the software?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like channel swapping, please." He didn't even know what channels were, and he was the head of Photoshop. Didn't even know. The same as most people, up until probably about 10 years ago, the channels palette would never have been on the screen when you go in and teach them, when I would go and teach them. They would only have the easy shit. They'd have layers, and they'd have effects and all sorts of stuff, but they wouldn't have channels on there. So I would know by looking at what palettes are on the screen, I'd know what their user level is. So I just said to the guy, I said, "Look, RGB is very easy, but it's very crap. And what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to have a layer that enables me to switch channels. So I can put the red channel on the green channel, and I can change the color in the most natural, organic way, so it's flawless." And he said, "Yeah, why would you want that? We've got RGB. You can just go to hue and you can make it any color you want." And I said, "Yeah, and it looks crap." And I remember being in the meeting, and I had the flip chart, and I got the pen, and I just drew the interface that I needed. And I just said, we need to be able to take the red channel and put it on the blue, and then put the blue on the green and the green on the red maybe. And then we can make any color that we want, and there is 0 compression, which means it has 100% integrity, which means it doesn't matter how long you look at it or who you give it to, no one can find anything wrong with it because you didn't do anything wrong. Hue and saturation is a child's toy. Make it blue, make it more blue. But where did all the detail go? So as long as you're dealing with a car, who cares? But if you're dealing with fabric, half the detail disappears. Who cares? I made it red. And so that was my claim to fame. It was, they didn't put it in the next version, and that was from version 3 to version 4. And then I waited for version 4 to come out, and I didn't see it in the layers, and I was really pissed off, and I thought I'd been ignored. And I think it was in version 5.5, Channel Mixer came out. And then I was horrified. Because the reason why I asked for it wasn't in the examples. It was to give photographers the ability to turn it into a monochrome using the red, green and blue, because that pandered to their historical kind of idea of how images are worked from an RGB perspective. But luckily I could still do what I needed, and without the interface I could still do it, because you just did it manually. And I still use the manual method instead of using the layer method, the adjustment layer method anyway, because it is more precise by using calculations and using copy and paste. It's long-winded, but it means I can be more creative with that task, to be a higher level with the least amount of effort, rather than doing something, then making a proof, sending it somewhere and having somebody come back and go, well, I quite like the color, but all the details gone missing. And then you have to deal with that problem. So, I don't know.
It's the difference between organic and throwing it in a Kenwood shaft. Because if you're pulling pixels around here, there and everywhere, that you know, people, logically, you know, you're doing some damage. Channels now, and certainly with CMYK, if you can identify which is the weaker channel, you actually know very well. You bolster it. And it can often be the black in CMYK.
Well, there's been so many times where I've shown people how to use the CMYK generator within Photoshop to generate the channel that you want from the black channel that you can generate from the RGB, and then you take the black channel and you lift it and you put it back in the RGB file, but the shape and the form and the detail that you get is second to none. You cannot do it any other way, and you just see the cloudy gaze that occurs when you go into how in the settings you do a custom RGB to CMYK, and then you get the old shit that I used to deal with, the print density curve and the overprint limit and the black limit, and then you can go in and change the dot gain. And in my mind, when I'm changing all that stuff, I can see the RGB file changing in the way that I want it, because I don't need to see it in front of me at the time. It's a process, just like developing and fix and washing, print, you know what I mean? From a negative, you look at a negative, after you've done that process for a while, you look at the negative and you can then imagine, you can imagine the print that will come from it. And then also, you know, when you had a, say like a negative, you would learn to be able to detect, by looking through a loop, you'd get a feel for the contrast in the negative, and then you would know what paper to put it on, because you had different grades of paper that had different degrees of contrast. Right?
Absolutely.
Well, there's this thing in sharpening.
Multi-grade as well.
Yeah.
To try and make that process even more efficient.
There's this thing which is my favorite thing to, you know, just pour scorn over, is the modern way of sharpening. So let me just tell you this little story. So when I started working on a scanner, and the only way I knew if I had set the right sharpening for that transparency or print was when I saw the proof. The amount of money that would have been spent to get me to the proof stage, if I had made it not enough or too much, obviously you have a window of subjectivity. But if my choice was outside of that window and it was too much or too less, my boss would just fold his arms and he'd just look at me and say, why should I allow you to come back here tomorrow? How could you make it so bad? Oh, Simon's gone. Anyway, I'll continue with the story. So levels of sharpening was based on judging the end game. Okay, so sharpening used to be, we've got you back. Oh my God, you've got to turn that off.
I didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah, you did that.
I know.
You need to do this one.
No.
Go on, I dare you. I dare you. Come on, do it for me. So, yeah, it's not working, thank God.
Good.
So levels of sharpening, let's just say, from a 2¼ inch square transparency going onto an A4 front cover that would have an enlargement factor of about 600%, okay? Because it would be 6 times the height to go on an A4 front cover. So let's say 700%. So we had a little table that would say, if you start with a 2¼ inch transparency and it's going up to 700%, this is the sharpening. I know that because when I worked eventually for Crossfield, I got sent into R&D, and for 6 months for my training, there was no training being in the classroom. I just worked with the developers who made sharpening, and I had to come up with the logarithmic scale that would show you enlargement factor via a different aperture would then have a different frequency of sharpness to give you a really, really good result. So all the time we were sharpening transparencies and prints to go to print, okay, because there was no hard drives at that time. The level of sharpening for a 2¼ inch transparency, let's just say, might be 7 and 3. 7 black fringe, 3 white fringe, because they were dealt with individually. That would just blow the mind of people today, because sharpening is just a fucking word that says sharpen, and I want a lot. Then what happened was they cut the input unit from the scanner to the output unit, and they put a hard drive in between with a screen on it. These screens were like £15,000 each, Barco monitors. They were huge and would be calibrated by me visually. No densitometers, because you can't. There was no way of doing color proofing back then. It was done with experience. And when you looked at the images that came from the scanner on the screen, it was, whoa, that looks crap. It's really crackly, it's really pixelated, it's really horrible. What has happened? I said, nothing has happened. You're just looking at something where you shouldn't be able to see it. When exactly the same scan went straight to film and then you made a chromolin, a match print, or you put it on the press, it would be fantastic. It'd be fantastic, because we knew that transparency at that enlargement, to make it a default position of being okay, it has to have this amount of sharpening. But on the screen, it looked like crap. I mean, honestly, you would never, but we knew. We knew. It's fine. It's going to be okay. We're not judging it for sharpness on the screen because it's out of context. The only context that matters is the end game. And all that has happened through desktop publishing is context is the screen that you're looking at when you're wanging around in Lightroom, right? And sharpening is just a slider. It's not a sophisticated thing. It's not sophisticated, and you have no control over it, apart from, I want a lot or a little bit, and that's it. And there's been no bigger degradation of the skill and the art of just sharpening. It used to be this huge thing, like there's true portrait sharpening, not a Lightroom setting that's called portrait. That's not portrait sharpening. That's the same engine, just at different settings. But there's a much, much better way of doing it, which I learned when I was 18. I first did portrait sharpening on a drum scanner when I was 18. I had no idea what I was doing until about 4 years later when I joined Crossfield, and then suddenly I was doing the same thing, and then the penny dropped, and then I got it completely. I understood it scientifically. That's why you need to use channels. That's why. And it's not because of fucking grayscales called luminosity masks. It's horrific. It's just horrific. So, I don't know, AI, good luck. I'm really, who knows what the industry is going to be. All I know is I have watched so many different people give their take on BlackRock and Vanguard, and I've got another one for you for your homework. This one,
Okay.
you could easily say that BlackRock and Vanguard are the root of all evil. Okay. BlackRock are the company that are buying up residential homes in the US so they can become the biggest rental agency. Okay.
That'll be a real negative for standards, won't it?
It's the end of freedom.
Yeah.
But this one, the McKinsey Group. The McKinsey Group. Management consultants. Oh dear. Yeah.
It's from the family of the devil.
Yeah, I mean, look, the three of them are together: BlackRock, Vanguard, and McKinsey Group. And this I watched yesterday. I watched this yesterday. It came up. I did a search for McKinsey Group, and then this came up because I just put management consultant in. And you should listen to what Steve Jobs, this is obviously of 1992, speaking about consultancy in its, I would argue, it's not its infancy, but the tendrils in which they had grown into society was very shallow at this point. They run the show now. If you wonder why your government makes stupid choices, they're not stupid, because they're listening to the people above them. And who's above them? Those people.
Well, just look at what happened to Liz Truss.
I watched a really good interview. I watched an interview. I thought she was a moron, given her speeches and her choices. But I watched an interview with her on trigonometry, this podcast, and hats off to this woman. She tried to change the establishment from the inside. And how long did she last?
49 days.
Yeah, and she just said it was not what I thought it was. And yeah, you're never gonna, we are never going to change the direction of the direction that these blood-sucking scum are holding the steering wheel. We are never going to be able to appease to them, or just stop oil, sit in the road and just piss people off. That is going to change nothing. It's just going to piss people off. The change, when it comes, is going to be bloody, and it's going to be really bad. And everybody, I think, knows that. And that's the very reason why we put up with it, why we put up with all this crap. Because everybody's too safe. Everybody doesn't want to give up what they worked their lives for. But you just listen to a number of people talk about, especially BlackRock. There's a whole bunch of people that you can listen to, and you just shake your head. How is that? How did anybody let them get into this position? And the answer is very simple: money. Money. Just big bags of money.
And the perspective on safe is relative to how dangerous it is outside. And if BlackRock are planting the landmines and sowing the spirals of barbed wire, then it's not a good outlook.
Yeah. So yeah, it's who's above the government. And so, my friend in South Africa sent me a thing about Adobe is being sued by the government. Who runs the government? The same people who are telling Adobe to do what they're doing, you monkey. You know what I mean? It's like, really? Really? Is change really going to happen? I don't think so. I know what needs to happen for change to occur, but people are not ready for that yet. Because it hasn't impinged upon the people that it needs to impinge upon for them to just go, enough is enough. And we're nowhere near that point yet, so it will get so much worse. And AI is going to be the thing, which is, I see AI exactly the same as Oppenheimer with his finger close to the button. Even though he knew it had a potential chance, even if there was 1% chance of it ending civilization, would you press the button? Oh, what a time for him to freeze. And he's freezed again, frozen again.
It should be here.
No. Would you press the button if there was a 1% chance that it would end the world? No.
Never.
No, nor would I. It's not my place. I don't have the responsibility. So when Bill Gates says, oh yeah, let's deal with global warming, which seriously isn't a thing, but let's keep Jedi mind tricking people into believing it's a thing, keeping them scared so they will keep voting for us. Why don't we put gold up in the atmosphere to stop the rays? What, you really honestly believe that you're the supreme being that knows so much more about the universe and how it works? We know nothing. And yet you would do something that could screw up this environment, this spaceship that we're on with our own life support system. Yet he wants to play around with it. And you are 100% sure you're not going to fuck it up.
Yeah, but don't forget his
100%
ancestors were responsible for clearing out the people that were closer to understanding what the universe was about. And I think they come under the banner of Native Americans, don't they? So maybe we'll leave that for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, look, we've gone on way too long. But anyway, we always will probably. Next week, or the next time, whenever we do it, I will give you the rundown on this thing when we speak next in a couple of days.
Perfect.
So you can do your research on it. But honestly, it's fantastic. Guys, thanks for watching. And we'll both be here in a few days and maybe next week, hopefully next week. And thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.